right, so it's 1 o'clock. This is Maria Overton again, and for this afternoon, I'm going to start the next session talking about scoping PD&E study, and I'm also going to cover a little bit on the transition from PD&E into design. Okay, bear with me. There you go. So when scoping a PD&E study, the PD&E project manager is responsible for scoping the PD&E study. And for the scoping, the project development activity includes identifying and considering various project-related issues that could affect cost and schedule of the study, also to determine work activities to be performed for the project, and also to include or refine key project parameters and requirements sufficient to define the project. So what is the standard scope of services? There's actually a procedure, number 375-030-020, which covers the standard scope of services and the staff hour estimation guidelines for PD&E projects and design services. And there is a statement that says that both department and consultant project managers will utilize the guide documents in scoping and negotiating all consultant contracts for PD&E studies and design services. So I'm sure that since I believe there's several of you that are design managers, you should be familiar with this policy, or procedure rather. So the standard scope of services for a PD&E study, before you start, you need to look into, you have to ask yourself a couple of questions. So is the design concurrent with PD&E? As you may be aware that a few years ago, between the PD&E, actually the OEM office and the design office and central office, we have been working hand in hand to provide guidance to for projects that are eligible to do PD&E and design concurrently. And the important thing is to identify those projects and that are appropriate for those for that situation, and just follow guidelines and identify the overlap opportunities. So if the project is concurrent, if the design project is concurrent with PD&E, then of course develop a standard scope of services for concurrent phases. If not, then you need to determine whether what tasks or activities have been completed ahead of PD&E, or should be. If there are activities completed ahead of PD&E, then the department provides the data or the report that will feed into the PD&E. If not, then need to determine what activities would be accelerated with the PD&E. If there were activities accelerated with PD&E, then need to ensure that those activities are listed and described and be in the knowledge of them. If not, then the PD&E would be a standalone scope of services. It would only be a PD&E study rather than a concurrent. So there are 4 options on to procure a PD&E studies. The PD&E contract followed by a design contract, which would be sequential phases, no overlap. 1 contract with both PD&E and design in concurrent phases. The third would be a PD&E contract with an option for design. And finally, 2 overlapping contracts, PD&E and design, that are procured simultaneously or separately. So what is the structure of the PD&E standard scope? So first, need to determine what the purpose of the project is. Need to be familiar with the project description and the objectives of the PD&E study. Need to include for public involvement throughout the study, all the way to design, which in the case that they were separate PD&E studies and design, of course, design would pick up the public involvement. Then, of course, needs to include the engineering analysis. That includes the alternatives, development and evaluation of alternatives. Then also needs to include the environmental analysis and the development of the different reports. Include the development of the environmental document and therefore the coordination with OEM for approval. And of course, the method of compensation and therefore the standard, the staff hours estimation, and any design services, because as you may well be aware, there's conceptual plans are developed during PD&E. So we have available a scope of service template, and there are guidelines available also in both OEM's website and the project production support website under the Office of Design. So the standard scope of services template can be it's a PDF document. A PDF document is produced. It includes default language with instructions and notes, and is developed using the web-based application SWEP. And shortly we'll show you how the PD&E scope of services is developed. There is flexibility. There's some flexibility to modify tasks in the tool. This includes scope activities with enough detail to meet the project objectives and to eliminate or scale down activities that were previously completed. As you may remember from yesterday's presentation, there could be some material, some information or data that we for PD&E can be adopted from planning. So that's why we have to be aware of of those products. How can they be adopted in the PD&E study? And of course, that needs to be taken into consideration when developing the scope of services. And like I said, there is guidance available in both OEM's website and in the production support website. And this falls to what I just mentioned previously. You can modify activities to be done also by others, and the several activities that could be needed or not during the PD&E study. So the instructions to prepare the scope of services. These instructions are available to describe how to develop the scope of services for a PD&E study. It defines the roles and responsibilities, emphasizes collaboration between various offices and disciplines, highlights important considerations before preparing the scope. It also explains how to use the scope of services development tool, discusses scope of services structure in detail, and explains information needed to develop each section of the scope. This is basically a screenshot from the information available in the production support website. This is right below, I think, the design information. So as you can see, the scope of services development tool will actually send has a link to SWEP here. It includes the instructions to prepare the scope of services, the standard scope of services for PD&E study, and with the standard language. It includes the tool and guidelines for the staff hour estimation. So I'm not going to go into detail on all these documents here, the guidelines and the forms, but please feel free to go and look into these. And of course, you can reach out to either our office or the production support office for any questions or support you may need. Okay, so let me cover real quick the standard scope of services tool in SWEP. So requesting access, it is very similar to what Pete was mentioning this morning, requesting access for SWEP. So this is done through the district environmental leadership. For district employees, they should send an email to the environmental administrator, environmental manager, or project development manager. Then the consultant project team members would go through the FDOT project manager. And for each account, the request would have to include the name of the person, email address, and their role. So this is how you would access the scoping tool in SWEP. Very similar to what you were seeing this earlier with Ruth. The navigation in SWEP is very, very similar. So in this case, you would be setting up the project by using the project setup wizard. Okay, so you would start by using a blank scope of services, or you can also use a previously saved scope of services. That can allow you to not have to do the whole scope of service in one sitting, right? Also, you can use previously, you can basically recycle or use a canned scope of services for similar projects or similar activities. Okay, so this is how the wizard would look like. So the green background would be areas that need information. These are set up by the wizard, the yellow background. And again, I'm just going to go through these real quick. You have the ability to open on the top right-hand side, kind of like a little, like a tab index that links to those sections. And again, this is how the wizard looks like to create the scope of services. And at the end, you can create a Word document of it in a PDF if need to. And once you check for completeness, the system will let you know if there's still areas that need input, if there's unanswered questions, etc. You can save it as a draft, or then you can, once you're ready, you can just save it as a final document. Okay, so for concurrent design and PD&E phases, this is basically what it means. Both PD&E and design phases would be procured in one contract. In other words, one contract with both PD&E study and design services. The combined phases, being the PD&E combined with design service, is one contract. That would be what it means, or that the concurrent phase is not a PD&E study with an option for design services. So what is the standard scope of services? You have to look for opportunities on overlapping activities. So in the event that you have PD&E and design activities, of course, they're not two completely unique phases. They have to interact because the PD&E feeds in the design activities. So these are just some of the activities that are part of that there's an overlapping opportunity between both phases, such as public involvement, again, that goes throughout the life of the project, all the way to construction, roadway analysis, drainage analysis, utilities, coordination, structure analysis, signalization, ITS, lighting, landscape survey, etc. So to modify a scope of overlapping activities, the goal is actually to prepare one scope of service with design and PD&E study combined. So the purpose is not to become a significant learning burden to practitioners, but the department actually learned from other state processes that also do the overlap design with PD&E. And the approach has been looking into maintaining the integrity of the activities in the roadway standard scope of services and eliminating redundancies from these overlapping activities. Of course, this allows for time savings, which in turn turns into money savings. So this is a typical, this kind of represents a schedule. What would be kind of a schedule without the number of dates and whatnot, but on the activities that can fit into design. So there's flexibility in scheduling these activities, and it is important that the districts and the consultants can schedule the overlapping activities depending on the project's context. Again, not all projects are the same, right? There's not a one size fits all. Okay, so projects that have fewer environmental issues and lesser engineering complexities are good candidates for overlapping phases, PD&E and design phases. For example, class of actions would be the type 2 CEs or SEERs, roadway projects where only one build alternative is evaluated against the no build, projects that do not involve project interchanges, intersections, or intersection modifications, and bridge replacement projects that do not involve construction of segmental bridges or movable spans. So just one-to-one, right? And a reminder would be that both the PD&E and design must have been programmed concurrently, and that the final design, being the phase 3 and 4, will not start until NEPA is approved. So moving from PD&E into design, these are some of the responsibilities for the design project manager would pick up, and I'm sure that most of you are familiar with this. So the design project manager then reviews the project commitments made during the PD&E phase, and these are in project suite. They also coordinate with a PD&E PM, which if you're going to be wearing both hats, that would be a tremendous advantage you would be involved throughout the life of the project. Ensure commitments are completed or accurately incorporated into the contract documents. The PM will also ensure commitments related to permit conditions are addressed. For example, species protection measures. Also needs to update the status of commitments during design phase. And for this, it needs to be ensured that the project commitment record is transmitted to the right-of-way or construction PM as applicable. And also re-engage with the environmental office or others to address commitments, including new commitments that could raise during the design phase. So more information is it's included in the PD&E manual part 2, chapter 22, and do not forget the reevaluations during the different phases, including design changes, right away, and construction.